Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you for joining us for this session. Just a quick intro. We are from Infosys, myself, Saju, and I have my colleague, Abhijit, who will join us soon. So we are a technology and consulting services company based out of, headquartered in Bangalore, India, and we operate out of 50 countries. We work closely with 800 plus clients today worldwide, and we have around 200,000 employees, or we call it as innovators, with us today in our company. So the session today is all about talking about zero business disruptions across the 4 seasons along with AWS. This is the 4 seasons of cloud adoption. It is nowhere related to any of the 4 seasons which happens across a year. It is more about the 4 seasons around the cloud adoption. And the 4 seasons are, we call it as the migration, second one is the integration, the third is the operations, and the fourth one is the security part around it. Now, before we get into the enterprise, business, and IT imperatives, I just want to spend some time in terms of what are we hearing from our clients today around the cloud adoption, and how is it happening within the enterprises, right? So if you look at our client base and the conversations what we are having today, I would like to bucket it under 2 major areas. One is there is a huge infrastructure-centric adoption or infrastructure-centric focus around the cloud adoption happening. And why is it happening? It's because there are capacity limitations within the organization. There is also an imminent need for a DC refresh, because some of them are due because of the assets are run out of life. And there is also an interest in terms of getting into an as a service model, right? Where you have more predictability in terms of your spend, and where you have more predictability in terms of what you should be planning for in terms of your capacity going forward. The second, the trend in terms of adoption, or the second, we would call it as the second way of looking at adoption for cloud is it's a portfolio-centric approach. That is where there is a cloud-first or a mobile-first strategy with some of our clients. There's also a wish in terms of getting into an as-a-service model around every aspects of either a platform or a database or an application or a function, right? And then there's an aspect of time to market, right? In terms of how you can launch rapid features, within your organization. And the last but not the least is bringing in new business capability by integrating with some of the partner technologies, right? So these are the 4 or 5 areas, what we have seen within the portfolio-centric approach. Now, both of these approaches are different in terms of the complexity, in terms of the way in which the cloud adoption happens, the timeline, what the customers are looking for. If you look at the infrastructure-centric approach, that is where the timeline is, they would like to get onto cloud in a very shorter timeline. They would like to get some of the dollars unlocked much quicker. Whereas the portfolio-centric approach is more in terms of what are those new features, what I can actually bring in, what level of efficiencies, what I can draw from cloud as a platform. So we'll talk about both, right? Both of these scenarios in the context of some of our clients. And we'll also talk about how we can address these things, using our 4-seasonal approach in terms of getting onto the cloud. Now, this is around the enterprise and business IT imperatives. Obviously, I think you would have all seen this. And coming from the business, these are all around the time to market aspect, efficiency and flexibility. And if you look at both what business and IT wants is consumption and accountability, right? Which I mentioned on the infrastructure-centric part as well as on the portfolio-centric one. Now, the new thing which is coming in, from operations, it's all around the knowledge-driven operations. How do How do you actually bring in predictability in terms of, effort, incident reduction, predictability in terms of identifying the incidents upfront, and eliminating some of these incidents, right? And you can actually bring in 40 to 50% reduction in the incidents. And the last but not the least is all around the business service assurance. Now, this is all about improving the visibility within what you are trying to deliver to the clients or deliver to your, external clients. Now, coming into the migration challenges faced by certain enterprises. Now, when I say migration, it's all around the adoption. How do you get onto this adoption wave? Now, we just want to, correlate this to some of the client contexts, what we have come across within our clientele or our client base. And I would like to draw this across to the two adoption methodologies, what is being adopted, whether it is an infrastructure-centric one or whether it is more of a portfolio-centric one. The first one is a leading healthcare company in US, right? Where we have been working closely with them in terms of taking some of their digital workloads onto cloud. That is one of those immediate requirements what the customer had, and this was more about the capacity, and it was more about time to market. What the customer was looking for, and the challenges was more around security and compliance, because this is from a compliance perspective. What are those aspects of compliance what I should be taking care, once I'm actually moving towards cloud. The second one is a leading wealth management company based out of Australia, and this journey started purely from an infrastructure-centric aspect. That is where they would like to. There was a DC refresh. What they were actually looking for, they were trying to unlock some dollars from looking for some major cost savings of their infrastructure spend. And what is a way in which you can actually bring in AWS as an alternate to their existing data center services? That was the way in which this adoption happened. While there was again a hybrid view. Once the journey to cloud started, there was a hybrid view in terms of bringing in more services, integrating with more of the services from external partners. But it all started in terms of bringing in some savings around the infrastructure. And the challenges was more around the regulatory compliance, governance, and security controls. And this was where there was certain regulatory requirements from a regional perspective which had to be met. And this being Australia, it was APRA compliance, which was supposed to be met, Australian Prudential Regulatory Authority. And that was one of those challenges what the customer had. There was a value prop of cloud, what was visible as a part of some of the assessment which was done in terms of the applications, what they're running, and the infrastructure cost, what is being drawn today. But the challenge was more in terms of how do we overcome some of these regulatory compliance and compliance requirements. Now, again, looking at another leading university in Australia, this is where the customer was looking for integrating, moving some of their applications, the learning platform or the learning module, what they were exposing to their students across the universities and schools onto cloud. And the challenge what they had was seamless and secure integrations. When you say secure integrations, there were around 40 plus applications, which was COTS and which was some of their partner services, which they wanted to integrate onto this platform. And how do I do that was the challenges what the customer had. While the solution is obviously what we had proposed is something, we had to have a integration bus on the cloud. We had a partner who we had brought in a partner product. But how do we approach that is something what we will take you through in some of our approaches, what I will explain in the coming slides. Now, the next one, these are all different scenarios. For example, a leading financial entity in the US. And this is where they wanted a zero-touch deployment for some of the applications what they were having. And they wanted to make sure that this is all taken, the whole application is being considered as a code, which can be deployed seamlessly while moving onto the cloud platform. Now, coming into our solutions, right? Now, how do we approach this? Our solutions we call it as Infosys solutions for the business workload migration. So it's all about coming out with a minimal viable path, from a migration perspective. And how do we approach? How do we come out with a minimal viable path? So we have two approaches. One is the migration with transformation, and one is without transformation. So this is typically the ones without transformation are the ones which is appropriate or which is suitable in a scenario where the customer is trying to come out with, has some capacity limitations, or definitely would like to have a DC refresh needs, right? That is where there is no time frame what they have in terms of getting the applications through a transformation, and that is where we would like to have a minimal viable path to take the whole applications or the portfolio onto cloud. Now, the activities what we normally do, it starts with the discovery of the assets, what is there on what the customer has today. It can be the portfolio. We call it as a portfolio assessment. We look at what are those viable options within the portfolio, and it comes out with a migration recommendation. Now, this migration recommendation normally has two parts. Either you can do it with a transformation and without a transformation, and each of them has pros and cons. And we list down the pros and cons. So the first three things, whatever I'm talking about, discovery, assessment, and migration, we have actually codified the entire complexity of doing it. So we have a migrator tool. That's what we have called it out, Cloud Migration Suite, which is our differentiator, which can do an automated discovery, do an automated analysis of the applications, and come out with some recommendations based on the target, what you really want. And in this case, the target is AWS. And then comes the whole aspect of coming out of the business case. What is the whole business case of getting the application onto cloud? And how does the business case stack up? And how does it stack up if we actually do it without a transformation and with a transformation? And then look at the design aspects of the cloud, which is moving on to the AWS part, looking at if there is a code refactoring required from an application perspective. Now, this is again the code refactoring. We have actually built a knowledge base and repository which could actually automatically analyze the code and give us recommendations in terms of if it needs to be refactored and what are the ways in which we can refactor it, and it can actually be done with minimal interventions, right? Or I would say, there is 30 to 40% time to market what we have actually brought in there in terms of getting this done. And then the whole aspect of QA certification. These are the core activities which happens around it. And we have a cloud assessment toolkit which actually does the whole entire life cycle of it. And then comes the cloud testing services, and we have 3 service lines around it. One is testing the cloud itself, right? We can actually, there are few customer requirements which comes in to figure out, can you actually help us in terms of testing the cloud services, what is being offered from some of the vendors today. And testing the applications, the applications what we are putting onto cloud, what we are migrating onto cloud, and testing in a cloud. How does it perform from an NFR perspective on applications, what is being moved onto cloud. So some of the differentiators, the way we have actually tried to do this, address this is, as I mentioned, we have codified some of the complexity. Plus, we have also brought in some level of investments in some of our partners, like a partner like a Cloud Endure is where we have invested in terms of this is going to help us in terms of migrating the workloads from a source to the cloud. And from a Cloud Assurance Suite, this is again what we have built to bring in an assurance around cloud. Now, I'd like to talk about our approach for workload migration. And this is, as I mentioned earlier, this starts with an assessment and a blueprinting phase. We actually look at the overall architecture. We actually look at the whole migration planning. How do we plan the migration in terms of grouping the workloads? And then the whole aspect of application refactoring path. Now, if we need to figure out what is the minimal viable path, what is the right way of doing that minimal viable path identification is something what we do. And this is done for each of the applications or each of the service. We do it on a services basis, which comprise of multiple applications. and come out with recommendations in terms of what level of services, what level of applications needs to be refactored for the target. Now, again, looking at the operations and support part of it, what level of operations and what operational SLAs, what we need to bring into the whole cloud environment, what is on the source today and what is that we can actually move on to target is another assessment what we do. And that is another recommendation what comes in as a part of our offering. Now, as a part of this whole 4 seasons of migration, operations, integration, and security on AWS, today we are actually taking one of our solution suites into production. And it was actually on a beta with some of our customers. We call it as the AWS Assurance Suite. So my colleague will actually give a small preview of that, how we are doing it as a solution, the whole 9 yards of getting the applications onto cloud, or the whole taking the whole cloud adoption across the 4 seasons, whatever we mentioned. So over to you, Abhijit. Thank you, sir. 3 and run.
All right, so this is the AWS. Yeah. So this is the AWS Assurance Suite, which Saju just spoke about. Primarily, this is aimed at helping enterprises leverage the best of what AWS has to offer with an enterprise-ready cloud associated with it. So what it provides, it's a multi-tenant platform wherein you can onboard multiple on top of it. And the idea behind this is to be able to actually provide a store, a marketplace wherein they can consume multiple different types of cloud services. The cloud services could be IaaS-based, PaaS-based. So there's a marketplace wherein you can look at the cloud store, and it comes with pre-configured options of being able to leverage and order cloud services, not just primarily what you see on the AWS catalog in terms of the infrastructure, compute, storage, but more importantly, how do we embed and integrate the operations controls, the security controls, the integrations back into the enterprise with multiple different systems as part of it. So if you look at a catalog option, you'll basically get to see details of how that particular container is deployed. So one is the infrastructure components you have, then you'll have the OS components, what are the operations controls embedded, which are either used by the enterprise, or you might want to leverage something which is offered by AWS natively. All of those can be seamlessly provided and adapted. You can have configuration management agents. So all of this is basically made available as a catalog item, wherein typically the developers, the testers, and organizations who want to basically order their own infrastructure before they start deploying code, they can just subscribe to a service at the click of a button. And it automates the entire provisioning workflow, right from being able to actually create virtual machines on the cloud, as well as embedding all the ops controls associated with it. And this accelerates the entire DevOps journey which organizations are taking. And this is one of the primary aspects of the solution which we bring in. So that is one component which we have. And once the virtual machines are provisioned, or your platform services are provisioned, there is a mechanism in which you can actually operate this entire life cycle of these machines seamlessly through a single pane of glass. So you can actually have multiple different tasks associated with it. You can do modification of an instance, creating an incident. It is integrated into an IT service management system. So all of these controls are embedded, and it provides complete self-service. And as we all know, right, with more power comes more responsibility. And the idea here is this is all governed. There are controls, organization rules, enterprise IT policies, all of that which is embedded so that it's highly secure in the way a developer or a tester or a production operations support engineer wants to basically operate this entire cloud environment. So this is something which is made available. We wanted to give you a brief snippet out here, and we'll talk about more about how we actually build this. And you can actually visit the booth to get more finer details about how we are doing the entire life cycle of the cloud migrations, as we just mentioned. So I'll switch back to the presentation now. Yeah. So Saju just spoke about the 4 seasons of migrations, and we saw that how we are basically taking this to market with our multi-tenant AWS Service Assurance Suite. And the idea behind it is to ease the process of onboarding clients who want to leverage AWS cloud services very easily with out-of-the-box catalog, which can be customized or configured or reconfigured according to the needs of the enterprise clients. Now, this is one of our clients, which is a premium drinks company. They wanted to actually move their entire digital marketing platform onto the cloud. And one of the key requirements for them was the agility in terms of speed. Can they have a catalog which basically caters to their needs of provisioning their tons of microsites or applications which are available, which are available on their internal data center? How can that be seamlessly migrated onto the cloud? How do you provision infrastructure through single click? How do you provision platforms through single click? How do you have complex multi-layered stacks leveraging enterprise middleware components provisioned, integrated, and weaved and onto the cloud through a self-service portal? And this is something which we basically helped them realize. It led to about 40% cost reduction in terms of hosting, as well as about 45% reduction in terms of the service management cost. And one of the primary reasons, we'll talk about it in the next few slides, as to why the service management cost gets reduced is the inherent automation which we bring on top of AWS services, which is how do you operate the environment very seamlessly? How do you have events coming to you, being pushed to you rather than you having to pull what is going wrong within your environment? How are those events getting auto-healed? So that is basically what is actually bringing the entire cost reduction aspects of it. So let's take a peek into how we actually went about building this, and what does this enterprise-grade service assurance solution, what does that mean? As we said, we are leveraging the AWS cloud. The platform is hosted on the AWS cloud. It's a multi-tenant platform. But when we talk about enterprise centricity, one of the primary things with enterprise centricity is about ensuring that the service which is running within the 4 walls of the data center, when it is actually moved and migrated to the cloud, it gets the same level of service assurance, the same level of what we call security, and the same level of performance, as well as usability, which you are getting within your 4 walls of your data center. And in order for an enterprise to do that, what we do is we basically, this is a common practice which everybody might be doing, but primarily the important part is you integrate with your enterprise AD and inherit all of your rules, all of your group policies and rules which are available within the enterprise AD, which is extended onto the public cloud. And more importantly, we create an entire organizational structure which mimics exactly how an organization is structured internally. So you might have an organization which is the top node. You might have what we call a business unit. You might have a portfolio, and then programs, and then applications. So that organization structure basically is mapped to your end users, which is the users who are coming from the AD, the Active Directory, and associated with each organization unit or a business unit, you basically put in a cost center management layer, you basically put in a business policy management layer, you associate the aspects of metering and billing multiple different services. So all of that is basically part of the enterprise organization centricity which we create. And what that does is, from that point on, when we actually release the service for self-service, for an end user to consume an IaaS service or consume a PaaS service onto the cloud, whenever you single click and you provision all of these services, your charge and the cost gets allocated to that particular cost center directly, which is integrated in the backend with your PeopleSoft systems or SAP systems or any other ERP systems. So that is the seamlessness which basically comes to the fore. And if you were to talk about a consumerized IT marketplace, one of the primary drivers is the ability to actually catalog every component of service, be it an IaaS service, PaaS service, or a business application which is hosted on the cloud which you want to consume. So that is something which is pretty important from the enterprise standpoint. Another key aspect is the policy-based orchestration. So there are business policies, there are IT policies. So business policies are all about ensuring that either your data is secure when it is actually moved onto the cloud, and you are complying with your industry regulatory compliance norms or your internal IT policy compliance norms. So all of those business policies and IT rules are codified in the form of what we call catalog rules, or in the form of dynamic policies which are basically applied. So say, for example, there's a web application which is a seasonal application, and you require, your business policy states that it needs to have the highest level of service availability, it needs to have the highest level of security in terms of encryption, in terms of standardization of different rules. That particular business policy is codified as part of that particular organization, business unit, portfolio, or application. And when the end user basically provisions that particular application or the infrastructure code, those policies get automatically applied and are actually made online when the user requests for that particular service. So policy-based orchestration is dynamically associating IT rules and business standards with what you are trying to consume in the cloud. So that's what the policy-based orchestration layer is all about. The third component of this migration is about ensuring that you are able to move a workload from one container to another container. You are able to move a workload from one cloud to another cloud, or your internal data center to a public cloud. Now, the ability to do that seamlessly, you can either do data migrations, you can either do application migrations. That's where we leverage the services of our partner whom we have invested in, which is Cloud Endure, wherein we actually provide you single-click migration of applications and workloads from one cloud to the other cloud. And that is pretty important because the ability to do that seamlessly without actually spending huge cycle times in terms of projects. You should not be having to create separate projects for every application. It should be part of one single migration wave wherein you can actually do multiple projects or multiple applications in real time. So that's the any-to-any workload migration advantage which we have with this. I already mentioned about enterprise-specific standardization. We all have different types of applications which require different types of blueprints, and those blueprints require have certain rules associated with it, as I mentioned. So the ability to actually leverage a particular blueprint either in the form of a template or in the form of a container, and being able to provision that container seamlessly through single click, and then associating that particular deployment of a middleware component with your enterprise's own DevOps management lifecycle for continuous build, continuous integration is very important. And that is what we actually provide. So if you were to basically leverage a PaaS template, which is your developer or tester wants to actually deploy a Java development environment and also wants to deploy a LAMP stack, the ability to provision this entire infrastructure, the application middleware stack, and associating it with your DevOps lifecycle for ensuring that your release management is also automated is something what we provide as part of the enterprise-specific standardization for applications. As we mentioned, and you saw in a brief demo, once the infrastructure is deployed and the application components are deployed, the developer wants self-service. And today's world, if we talk about DevOps, it's about the ability for the developer to be able to manage the production deployment of the applications also, if you wish, as per your organization rules, through a single pane of glass, through a self-service portal. And the ability to patch an application, the ability to automate what we call the lifecycle management of the applications to ensure that the security checks are appropriate, all of that is automated. So what you actually get in form of a single pane of glass is basically the IT command center, wherein the functions are executed by the automated robots. And what you see on the ground is an audit trail of what was done, so that your governance is in place to ensure that everything is hanging in balance as far as your business service on the cloud is concerned. So we have different personas for different portals for different personas. So if you have a DevOps persona, he might have a different look and feel. If there's an Ops persona, you might have a different look and feel. If it's an architect who's designing these PaaS templates or infrastructure templates, you'll have a different look and feel for that. So that basically brings the entire construct of self-service to the fore. Now, amongst all of this, the highly scalable integration layer is very key, because if you bring something out to the cloud, you need to ensure that you can actually it's back compatible with what you have internally within your enterprise. So there are examples like your AD, your PeopleSoft systems, your security tools. You might not want to leverage new security tools which are available on the cloud. You might want to fall back on your existing security tools. You might not want to bring in new monitoring tools to the enterprise, but you might want to leverage what you have existing within your enterprise. So the ability to actually integrate back from the cloud onto what you have for your traditional data center and extend it for consuming the same service on the cloud is also pretty important. And that's what the scalable integration layer provides. And on top of it, as I said, it's all about ensuring that your DevOps process is pretty agile. So one is the ability to order all of that through a self-service marketplace. Second is the ability to actually leverage containers and then do the deployments of your applications through the containerized services which are available either through AWS or leveraging your own internal Docker deployments and applying it to your platform. The key thing is all of this can get orchestrated through a single orchestration layer. You do not need to have 7 different tools underlying and for each having a separate UI, a separate user interface. You can actually integrate that entire experience of orchestrating everything, the life cycle of everything on the cloud using a single orchestration layer, and wherein your cloud is AWS and you want to manage all of these services holistically. So this accelerates the entire time to market of onboarding newer services, leveraging new AWS services all onto the cloud very seamlessly. Yeah. So this is what we did. This is a case study for a leading aircraft manufacturer in the US. So they had a 18-year-old application, which was a COTS application. And that particular application was then customized by this particular aircraft manufacturer for their various reasons. Now, what this particular application provided was, it was basically a materials inventory for everything which happens with their aircrafts in the industry. And they wanted to actually move this application onto the cloud. Now, obviously, the cloud, they were moving to the cloud for obvious TCO reasons. One of the primary objectives was reduce total cost of operations. And what we provided them was a managed service on the AWS cloud, leveraging our platform. And the most important aspect was ability to seamlessly migrate. So we created that entire migration journey. We discovered what are the dependencies of this particular application, what are the technical challenges which would be dealt with, which would need to be dealt with when you move such an application onto the cloud, and what would be the backward compatibility which is needed if in case the templates which are offered out of box on AWS or what is currently within the enterprise do not work as is. Is there a OS migration which is needed from what they had internally? Can the application be moved to a different Tomcat container or a JBoss container if you're actually moving that application? All of these considerations were taken care of when we actually came up with the business case. And then the ability to actually have a continuous development environment available for the developers and testers to make changes to these applications through that self-service catalog was made available to the developers and testers. And then the ability to manage and monitor and operate this application on the cloud was pretty important, because for this particular manufacturer, this application was being consumed by tons of their other internal consumers, their other business partners who are actually ordering parts of aircrafts onto this. So such a business critical application, although it was 18-year-old, had a seamless migration path onto AWS. It was not the latest and greatest of all technologies which they were using, but we were able to actually black box it, containerize it, and deploy it on the cloud. So while the newer generation web applications, it's easy to migrate those, you can actually look at legacy applications and move them to the cloud and still run your business with the most agile form of services which are available to you. So this is something which we did as a complete transformation engagement. We are still managing the end-to-end operations for that client around this service. Now, what we saw previously was service orchestration. Like in the service orchestration journey, how do we provide a self-service marketplace for end users to be able to consume development and test services on the AWS cloud, as well as do the production management. Now, when we talk about enterprise-grade service assurance, it's all about ensuring that every aspect of the enterprise application or the enterprise infrastructure model or the enterprise platforms model is embedded into a knowledge base. The knowledge base is something which is basically created, which is very privy to each and every enterprise. And the knowledge base basically has the tenets of creating a knowledge ontology, which can help the system think and act on its own when you actually create a repository of all of your enterprise rules as well as all of your enterprise operations data in real time. How do you make that knowledge-driven solution be the fulcrum or be the linchpin for ensuring all of your operations onto the cloud are automated? Now, one of the things is, why is this applicable only to the cloud? And obviously, this can be applied to a traditional data center as well. When we actually move to the cloud, you are not looking at running your operations the same way as you were running previously when you were in the data center. traditionally our data center support model, operation support model is organized at the layers, wherein you have teams which are staffed for either doing web application support or infrastructure support or security support. But when you're actually moving things onto the cloud, obviously there's a lot of inherent automation which AWS brings by itself in terms of for you to actually get statistics about how your applications are functioning or how your environment is. But more importantly, you also want to ensure that the TCO reduction which we are talking about doesn't come only from moving your workloads onto the cloud. It's also about how do you reframe or reorient your entire operations model. Now, reorienting your operations model would mean that you might have a server to admin ratio of, say, 1:1,000, 1:2,000, 1:10,000. I mean, the Facebooks of the world, et cetera, are doing pretty high admin ratios, but that is for a dedicated type of a workload which they are running. Their businesses is a dedicated type of workload. For the enterprise, it's different because you're trying to move a complex potpourri of workloads, which could be ERP applications, which could be high-performance compute applications, infrastructure applications, your web applications. All of these are moving onto the cloud. So you might not be able to leverage the same server-to-admin ratios for operating your environment. But how do you actually ensure that your server-to-admin ratio actually decreases and you're actually leveraging the power of automation? Because automation could be there, but you might not be leveraging it. And one of the ways of basically doing this is to ensure that you actually create a knowledge ontology of all of your components which are required for managing, maintaining, and securing your operations workloads on the cloud. What that means is you basically you create a historical data warehouse, a data lake of sorts, which basically tells you what are the events which have happened in real time, not only for your application events or your middleware platform events, but what are the events which are occurring on the AWS cloud? What are how do you capture a complex stream of events which is coming from CloudWatch into a knowledge base? How do you look at identifying which events are business critical or which events can actually have an impact on the performance of your application or on the business service which you're operating? How do you basically then create a knowledge tree around ensuring that once you have actually recorded a resolution for a particular problem or an event which has occurred within your environment, that particular knowledge or problem or the solution is actually recorded within your data warehouse, within your data lake, and then it can be actually referred back to through artificial intelligence techniques, through machine learning techniques, by your robotic process automation or by the power of software robots which you create. So the ability to actually capture an enterprise knowledge ontology which can help you isolate a problem right from the business process to the business service to the application to the middleware to the infrastructure to the underlying virtual machine or the data center layer. How do you actually create a full stack visibility of what is going wrong within your business service, and how do you ensure that you are proactive about it? And it's not just you as an operator who are proactive about it, but how do you ensure that the machine itself understands the nomenclature of what you are actually supporting, and how does it actually proactively come back with recommendations for resolving these complex issues without human intervention, is what will actually get you to that desired server to admin ratio which you seek with extreme automation available in the cloud. And that will actually also aid in shrinking your overall total cost of operations reduction and not just the move to the cloud. So how do you devise your operations model? How do you ensure that you have real-time visibility of the services consumed by each and every stakeholder? How do you have real-time visibility of the costs associated with your dev environments, test environments? How can the system give you recommendations in terms of how to optimize your infrastructure usage on the cloud or how to optimize your service usage on the cloud? How do you get recommendations automatically in terms of improving the performance of the applications which are deployed on the cloud? All of that needs to be considered as a production DevOps model, if I were to say. And DevOps is not just about what you do in the application development domain or the application testing domain, but it's also about how do you manage production efficiently with a lot of agility. And this is one of the mechanisms. So what we have as part of the AWS Assurance Suite platform is we provide all of these services. As I said, it's all about ensuring supporting business services and not about supporting IT layers. And that is the fundamental shift which is happening, which needs to be made by every enterprise today, is to look at how do you do a shift left from code maintenance to infrastructure maintenance to just business process support. And the ability to give the top-down visibility of that particular business process or service issue with push feeds coming to you rather than you having to pull things is what we have based. And this is powered by our AI platform, Mana, which we have launched recently. So this is available as a service on the cloud along with our AWS Assurance Suite when we take it to our clients. So that is something which is we are pretty passionate about, and we are actually investing a huge amount of effort in terms of creating this entire knowledge model for enterprises. And this knowledge model which we are creating is available to every enterprise who wants to actually migrate their workloads onto our Service Assurance Suite platform. Again, one of the primary drivers around everything today is about user experience. So we provide different operations personas have different user experience views. So there's a view for a security admin, there's a view for an infrastructure admin, and you can actually combine all of these views as mashups for supporting your environments together. So that's pretty important, so that you don't have to deal with 10 different screens of 10 different tools. Everything is aggregated, integrated, and merged into one consolidated, manageable view, which is ultimately supporting your business service, and that's all you care about. You don't care about 50 other tools which are lying underneath it. But how can you actually manage and operate that service effectively is what is most important. So this is something Saju spoke about, this client, wherein we had actually done the entire migration and the transformation for the Australian client. And we are actually running their entire about 200 plus workloads of this client on the cloud, leveraging our platform with a very lean operations team. And all of what I spoke about in terms of creating a production DevOps model is basically embedded. So you do not have you do not staff people at the layers. You basically have a consolidated and a merged team which can actually do multiple things. One of the things which we try to do here is through a lot of infrastructure as code automation as well as platform as code automation, which is embedded into the platform. You actually reduce the dependency on the tribal knowledge of the person who's supporting this environment. And all of that is made available as single click, right click, English text. And that actually speeds up the entire process of operation support, which you actually bring out. So what we achieved for this client was they were locked in with a traditional data center services client for the last 20 plus years. And they wanted to migrate to the cloud, which is where we actually worked out the business case for the AWS cloud. And actually that provided them a continuous contestability. So there were certain workloads which they had parked, saying they'll never move out of the traditional data center and will only move the newer web application type of workloads to the public cloud. But through this process of extreme operations efficiency, which we brought in through this process of a lot of self-service, which was actually empowered to the developers and the testers for building their applications, they ended up migrating additional workloads from that data center partner also to the cloud. So it's a learning process for them as well, but this actually encouraged them to take big steps, and now AWS is their de facto cloud platform, which they have actually decided, and most of their workloads are getting moved onto this cloud platform. So that's something which is important. We could actually do that because we strategized it right in terms of the workload migration path, the factory which we created for workload migration. So I spoke about the two layers, and this is the integrated view of our platform. We call it the knowledge-driven unified service assurance platform, which we are taking to our clients. If you see on the left-hand side, there's a bunch of IaaS, PaaS, traditional data center services, as well as SaaS services which you might want to consume. In between, there is this brokerage and governance layer, which is nothing but a service integration layer, which is what the Assurance Suite provides. It's a homogeneous user experience it provides homogeneous user experience, it provides maximum performance, optimal costs, as well as seamless governance through all of the controls which I just spoke about, which are embedded in it. Some of the key tenets of the platform are a unified service catalog, whether you want to order whether you want to order a desktop, or whether you want to order a virtual machine in the cloud, or whether you want to order what we call an AWS PaaS service or a SaaS service. All of that is available through a unified service catalog. There's a provisioning and migration function which is available for each of the services which you want to move to the cloud for. There's extreme orchestration and automation built into it. You saw the earlier slide on service orchestration, which powers this entire platform functioning and the dynamics. There's security controls embedded. There's out-of-the-box security controls which are available, which are native AWS security controls, as well as your third-party tools which you might want to bring on board. There's a single pane of administration for the operators, for the different user personas or the user communities who want to actually leverage this platform. There's tons of operations analytics embedded, which is powered by our Infosys Mana solution, which is the AI platform which we have. And the ability for knowledge-driven ops, it provides a great opportunity to move from a governed operating environment to a supervised learning operative environment to an unsupervised learning operating environment. That is the journey which every organization has to traverse towards a true AI model, artificial intelligence model for the business and IT. And that's what we actually start with by creating a knowledge-driven ops model. You create your knowledge ontology, store everything, and then create robots and create algorithms to basically ensure that what you have learned is actually applied in terms of governance of operations for this entire environment. And then, as I said, the ability for the organization to actually entrust more power to the end users through the subscription-based model which we have, so that there's showback or billing at a user level, at a business unit level, at an org level, at a partner level. You can actually get a view of all of these billing capabilities. And that's where we actually leverage our partner solution called Cloudine, which provides enterprise-grade billing monitoring for what you do onto the cloud. And that's what we actually have inbuilt onto the platform as well. And also a unified operations console. As I said, different user communities use this. There's ops teams, there's IT users, there's business users. There's something which you can actually create and customize as a user experience through different persona-based portals for each of these groups. And you get the I spoke about the characteristics of the platform. So this is something which organizations are looking to leverage. They might be on the journey midway or maybe quarter way, but this is something which organizations are going to need. Also, it propels their ability to actually consume on-premise as well as public cloud services also through the same platform when we have this kind of a multi-tenant platform available to them. Now, this platform can support all types of workloads which you want to move to the cloud. It's not specifically for either web workloads. So we have aided our clients in moving their dev test platform. So we have customers Saju spoke about who are leveraging the platform just to do dev test management, their entire DevOps process acceleration. Some clients are leveraging just our operations suite, and we provide ops services for their existing workloads onto the cloud. So the transformation might have been done by somebody else, but we provide end-to-end operation services for them. The ability to actually put newer services on the cloud, like infrastructure, disaster recovery services, storage services, backup and archiving services are also some of the workloads which we have moved to the cloud for some of our clients out there. How do we actually do a packaged application hosting on the AWS cloud, be it a SAP suite or be it a PeopleSoft suite or a Siebel application? How do you actually get such heavyweight applications onto the cloud and ensure that you get the same performance? Because these are business critical systems. There are car manufacturers whose entire manufacturing line is based on an SAP suite out there. And when they want to move such an application onto the cloud, you require an enterprise-grade service assurance platform to ensure that everything hangs in balance when they actually make this move out. There's business apps, as I mentioned, for this leading retail manufacturer. Their core business application, which was an 18-year-old legacy application, was moved to the cloud, and we could actually provide them the same levels of service assurance which they had. High-performance compute apps are another big area. We have seen many banks as well as financial services institutions, insurance and healthcare companies leverage the complex analytics and algorithm capabilities which are provided by AWS, and that's something which we make available as well. So all of these enterprise workloads is something which every enterprise desires, and they are all available on the AWS cloud, made available to the enterprise with enterprise-grade service assurance through our platform. So, and just to summarize, the left-hand side bar indicates the native investments which we are making for our clients to basically accelerate their journey onto the cloud, be it the Workload Migration Suite, be it the Assurance Suite, be it the AI platform, which we are embedding all of these capabilities into one single consumable platform by our clients. And on the right-hand side are the investments which we are making in the startup community. Cloudine and Cloud Endure are investments which we have taken as stakes in startups. Panaya is a company which we have acquired for helping accelerate SAP workload migrations to the cloud, which comes up with a complete business case of understanding what the customer's footprint is and how do you actually move a SAP application and test it onto the cloud. So this is in a nutshell the core proposition which we are taking to our clients as part of our journey. So we'll just pause here and see if there are any questions which we want to take.